Welcome, everybody. This is our candidate for the instructional assistant professor position. Dr. Melissa Sahl is the affiliated faculty at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She's a multidisciplinary engineer with degrees in mechanical and electrical engineering. Her specialization is robotics and mechatronics, and she has extensive industry experience in manufacturing and software with research focused on technology and human health. So please welcome Dr. Sahl as she presents her webinar titled Empowering a More Ethical and Healthy Society Through Education. Please.
All right, so with that, all right, so brief agenda. Now, as I'm going through this, I know that it was set up for 45 minutes, talking and then 15 minutes question and answer. I'm okay if you stop me in the middle and just ask me a question like while it's coming up, because one, it gets it off your mind, and two, I think it's better just to break things up. I will give the kind of a little preamble. Normally, I don't like lecture more than about 5 minutes just to give some background, and then we'll do an activity, and then I might give like another little mini lecture and then an activity or something. So it's not normal for me to talk, but given the situation and that it's mostly faculty and you're not being graded, and then I don't have any reason to entice you to participate, kind of adapt. And I've done this before, and if it's not students, I try to do a little like Mentimeter thing. Nobody does it. I know better, so I won't pretend. But just to note, I'm very much okay if you saw, if we want to change the order of this, we can do that. That's fine. I'm not stuck to this, so we're okay there. So to start, a little bit of background about me, just just to rethink those questions. I've kind of degrees and all kinds of sort of things. I focus on robotics, and you really need to have all of the different backgrounds. Although I've done robotics manufacturing, I really like applying it towards things that are going to help, people's health, whether that's food or actually in medicine. It's about the same thing. Actually, from the robotics point of view, it's the same sort of system you did in chemistry and biology. So it works exactly the same. I do have some industry work. I've done reverse manufacturing. I'm originally from Detroit, so that was a big thing. So I had some, good experiences there. And then I always joke I have degrees in all these hardware fields, but then everything always ends up in software. So no, I can't avoid it. So I have a very, very extensive software experience, because you can build the most wonderful thing electrically, mechanically, it's sound, and it's not going to do anything until you've got that software going. So that's kind of why I'm, in that realm. I like to do practical research. I've done it in things like mobile and medical robotics, and I look at trying to make things, sustainable. I try to do modularity. I want it to actually be used and not, some theory somewhere to put on the shelf and like, look, I have the most complicated system. That's not what wins. If it can get used and you're doing good for the public, then that's what I think is a success. And not, this is not brag, but just to know, like I do have some patents, but one of the things I focus on is creativity, and I try to tell students I'm just a normal person. I'm not like a genius or anything. You don't need to be. Creativity is something you can learn, and I think that it's important in all of the classes to try to encourage students to, realize that you can be creative and that it's not something that you have to be some genius to do. You just need to take the risk and realize it's okay, and that something good can come out of it. So, I like to try to incorporate that. One of the projects that I've really been doing the last about year or so is the ethical software lab, and I'll talk a little more about it, but that's something that I've been doing a lot, and it does apply to everything as we kind of discussed. So okay, this is the only kind of thing, but with regards to teaching, just for your reflection, I know it's not students, so if you're students, I make you talk, but you think about what was the most effective or memorable thing, as either as a student or in your classrooms. And if you think about what you're doing, it's probably not like what I'm doing now, which is, this sort of thing is like, I don't really like doing it, because it's I can't practice what I preach in this type of environment, but it's okay. But if you think about it, what is the good way to teach? And all the research shows, one, people like triangles in education. But all the research shows things where you're creating, where you're doing real world projects, where you're actually doing what you're trying to learn, or even teaching what you're trying to learn, even if you're not sure yet, but you're trying to teach it to somebody else, that's gonna make you learn much more than just reading a book. If this was a technical presentation, I definitely wouldn't stand up here and talk, to students. Because you're not gonna, students they'd be lucky to get 10% or 20%. They'd be lucky, and that's if they're paying attention. And that's not their fault, that's just the way our brain works, so, you have to keep that in mind, that's not because they're bad students, or this is just how human beings are. So it's important to keep these things in mind, so. With that regard, when I teach, I like to make it active. And again, I'm not practicing what I preach, and I will say that right now, given the situation, I don't like doing it this way. But I don't really do a lot of PowerPoint. I'll have just some brief things, but you want to make it active. And I can do things, some ask questions, even if you don't respond, maybe at least, you're thinking about it and it makes it memorable that way. It helps a little. I like to do project based. Even on something simple, statics, dynamics, some of the base courses that I've done, basic programming, give them a project. Maybe it's not a funded research, project, but you give them something from the real world and say, can you implement a piece of this? What would be the design of this? Something, I've done in statics, at the time, local library wanted to have a green wall. And it said, okay, well, we're gonna have to mount a rack. Let's do, we're not gonna do the civil part of it and worry about the concrete. But just, let's make the rack not fail. So let's do an analysis. And it was a real world project that, was gonna be implemented. And they got to do some design on that before we sent it off to the, capstone. So they're, gonna, freshmen, sophomores working with our seniors. And that helps, that makes that class much more memorable and relatable. And not just okay, I'm gonna be doing some equations and I don't know why I'm doing this. So I think, it's very important to keep engagement and keep students in the program. Retention is a big thing in engineering. I know for sure, I don't know about agriculture, but in engineering, retention is a big problem because students get bored and they're like, why did they sign up? I don't remember now. And so you gotta remind them in every course, not just capstone. I like to include the, what's called professional skills or things like that and everything as well. Of course, as you kind of noticed maybe already with the ethical software lab, I'm really big on ethics. And keeping in mind our end goal. If you really want to have a good end goal, then you need to have the ethics in mind. And there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to balance with what you're doing. If you're saying, hey, I'm agreeing to sustainable things, then you need to do it. And you can still make money doing it, but you need to do what you say. If you're not going to do it, then just don't say it. And creativity, being professional, being able to put out something. If you can't communicate what you did, it's like you didn't do it. And that's a big thing, in industry. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO, if you're a worker. If you can't tell your boss what you did, they're not going to think you did anything. If you're a CEO and you can't tell the public what you did, they're going to think your company didn't do anything. So all of these are important, and wherever you're headed, these are all very important things. So it's important as faculty as we go too. We gotta explain what we did as well. So I try to do it all, even just statics and things like that. I add a little bit, why not give a little presentation? Yeah, they're scared, they don't want to. But it's good to do it with low stakes, and then when they get to the capstone, it's like no big deal. So, okay, all right. It's okay. And as far as my teaching, I kind of joke, I started teaching online before COVID. I keep saying I beat the rush. But my experience has allowed me, I've done a lot of in-person, solely in-person. I was doing online even before COVID. I kept doing it well after COVID. And asynchronous and synchronous both. A lot of experience doing multi things. Currently, I do hybrid. I don't live in Maryland. And so I just go up there, 2 to 4 times a semester. A lot of students are on a visa. I want to make sure that there's that in-person component, one for their visa, and 2, it's good to make that connection. And so, but then the rest of it doing it online. So I'm used to any modality. I've done labs online. Everything can be done. And so, depending on needs, not every student is going to like every modality. There's kind of, different students, different situations, different classes, there's things where one's better than the other. It's kind of discussed with us in the morning, but I have some research and stuff doing things like making the online learning just as effective as in person. And that's important for those that don't have any option. They really can't travel to campus or something. you want to try to reach as many students as possible and make that effective. And I don't mind doing, both classrooms, the theoretical stuff, although I will make it a little bit, as I noted, I'll try to apply it when I can, even if it's theoretical. And doing labs too. I think, the labs are always fun. They're more work, but they're also really fun. So I've kind of done both. Another thing that I do, of course, is never, mandatory, but I like doing it anyways, having, workshops and study sessions. I've even held workshops, students, wanted some more information about some topic, and it wasn't particularly technical, so I even advertised and said, okay, anybody on campus, come learn about this topic. Because that helps collaboration, helps students meet other people on campus. It's part of what they're here for, is to make those connections and network for their career. So it's important to help make sure they get out of just just their college and make sure that they meet some other people. And it's good for the other people who know about engineering and understand, okay, it's not just a bunch of people, well, maybe it is, but sitting in cubicles on the computer all day. And even if it is, at least you understand what the work is being done. So I've done that as well. So curriculum design, I actually love doing curriculum design, and it's weird, and I, kind of get weird look sometimes. I like doing the assessments and the continual improvement and things like that for the accreditation. I think that's important. If you're an engineer, if you're teaching, you're getting data, and then you need to use that. It's a design cycle, just like everything else. How can you improve the class? How can you make the learning more effective? It's a cycle. And so it's an engineering problem, just like everything else. And I treat it that way because that's what it is. So I was at Florida Poly shortly after it started up. Now that was an interesting experience because the program had actually already been underway for just over a year, but they didn't have the full curriculum built out. And as somebody put it, we were building the airplane while we were in flight. And so, like I remember designing the dynamics course for the mechanical engineering program. The students were taking on their senior year. This is a sophomore level course, by the way. That's interesting problems, that you're trying to do where they're taking capstone and a basic course at the same time, which is not great for accreditation, by the way, but we made it work. And so I helped build out that program. It was a project-based program. We had projects for every single level. So freshman year, design, sophomore year, which is what I kind of took over and run because it's a key year to keep retention. I did CAD and did like 3D printing, manufacturing and how to make things. And I brought in the local school district, said, what do you need? And they said, we need stuff for our special education classes. This, adaptive stuff is really expensive. And I had students design and build out the adaptive stuff. The school benefited, the students benefited. So I did that. We also had design done in, of course, in the junior and senior year, which is pretty typical. But that was like something that was really interesting and fun to go through and build that out. The startup program at Embry-Riddle, we got the first 100% online engineering degree accredited. So, again, that was kind of already somewhat established, and then, going in and tweaking, and then what courses do we need to make, and then working with ABIT to figure out how to accredit a 100% online program. In engineering, it was basic engineering, combining electrical and mechanical. And so how do you do that, and making the labs work and everything online and remotely with students on all different time zones and working asynchronously. So that was an interesting, experience as well. Did the initial ABIT accreditations of both of those programs. And, again, I know I'm weird that I kind of think that's an interesting, I approach it as an engineering program, a problem. So it's, that was good. With everything I do, I like to do the backwards design with goals in mind. What do you want the students to learn? And then you just build everything out. And then when you get to it, there should be practical projects, and the assessment should match what you're trying to go. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a course and you say, well, you want the students to be gaining professional skills, but you just have them sitting at home doing homework by themselves. That assessment doesn't match, and then maybe individual exams, that assessment doesn't match what the goal of the course is. So you want to make sure to keep that in mind. Now, I know here you want new courses, what kind of courses. I don't, have that on the slide because it's kind of open. I'm coming in from the outside. I don't want to necessarily say, oh, well, you need to have. I think that it's important to, to continually, and not just do it once, to continually kind of keep pulling students. Okay, where are you going? What are your interests? And, and also maybe check with industry too, what do you need? And it's important to keep that continuous process where you're pulling and continually updating. You might have your own, I have my own ideas, everybody has their own ideas. But I can have a great idea, but if it's not gonna get the students to the goal, again, the end goal in mind. It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, you can have this fantastic program to do something that nobody at the, you know, Florida needs. Well, that's not gonna help anybody, other than saying, oh, look, we have this new program, that doesn't help anybody. So I think that it's, you know, important to kind of keep that continual feedback and treat it like an engineering process. It's constantly changing. You're constantly evaluating, you're taking data and feeding it in. You've got to do that. So I treat it like an engineer along the way, everything. So, so that's, some background on that. And again, if there's any questions, I can go into more specifics, but. I try to put students first. I try to keep that in mind. What is our ultimate goal? Some places they're like, well, we want to look good to the public, or we want to. I think, you're trying to, the students are the product in a way of the university, yes. But they're coming in, they're spending their time, they're spending their money. You need to make sure that they're getting what they need and that they feel good about it, because otherwise you're not going to have that student product coming out because they're not going to come in. So it's important to keep them in mind. Things of that, it's expensive. I mean, we all know it's really expensive to go to college. So I try to do things like, if it's possible, to use and create, free or low cost textbook materials. Okay, you're gonna be paying a couple $1,000s for a course. Do you really need 5 textbooks that cost $200 a piece? Maybe not. Maybe sometimes you do. Sometimes that's all there is, and that there's nothing to be done about it. But there's actually a lot of open source free, resources out there. They're legal, they're free, they're out there for use. And so I try to use that as much as possible, because some of this stuff hasn't changed in 20 years. The basics are not going to change that much. So it's just the newer stuff. So focus the resources on buying the materials I need for the newer stuff, and not things that have been around since the 1950s. That sort. I like to do, like I said, not like what I'm doing now. I like to do very short videos, like keep it under 5 minutes a piece, make it modular. And maybe just a few slides, and provide key information. The attention spans are kind of short. Also, things happen, you get busy. I rather have a module where I have maybe 15 5-minute videos if I need to get through a really tough subject, and they can keep playing one 5-minute video forever until they get it, or contact me with that one 5-minute video and we can talk about that, than having a really long video and they're like, I think it was minute 45. It's difficult. And also, things update. Again, we're trying to keep costs down, trying to give value to the students. By making it modular, if I need to change a video, I can just change that 5-minute one. I don't have to re-record a whole long video and do all that editing and all the text and everything you need to make it accessible. It's easier to do it in pieces. And then you can add in one if you need to, and put it where it belongs if there's something new that comes up, or take out something that's really outdated. So as with engineering, I do my teaching on engineering, and I make it modular. It makes it more efficient and lower costs and everything, and hopefully a better value for the students. You want to keep the curriculum relevant. That's kind of a big thing. It changes constantly. I don't think it's possible, even if I've taught a course like 6 times, I will do an update every single semester. There's little things that change. You want to make sure you kind of step, even if it's just something in the assignment or some notes, you want to show that, okay, no, it's still relevant today. This is this is in the news now, things like that. So it's important. Even things like statics and dynamics, there's stuff very basic that is still relevant that you can talk about to bring it in and make it real. And again, I always try to make sure the assessments match the goals. You got to keep that in mind. You can't just say, it's easier just to give an exam. I've got 150 students, let me just give an exam that's bubble. If your goals are not aligned to that assessment, as much as work is going to be, you need to make sure that the assessment's aligned with goals. And there's a way to make it so that you can do an active learning assessment with 150 students and not make it so you're spending the rest of your life grading it. You can do that. And so it's important to use all the techniques at hand so that you can make things match. And that's something that I always try to make. Sometimes it makes sense to get an exam, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the goals. And so you need to keep that in mind. So kind of changing a little bit, talking about some of the outreach things I do. It's a little robot that I use sometimes to get students interested in robotics, but an open source platform. So things that I do, I've organized and run conferences here in Florida. Actually, the reason I've been at UF before is being part of the Florida Conference on Recent Advances in Robotics. And it's a conference that moves around Florida, and we keep it very, very low cost, like it's either free or $20 to attend, so that it's very student friendly. The students can show up, We have it on like a Thursday, Friday morning, so they get, weekly rates at wherever they're staying, so they don't have to pay weekend rates at a hotel. And try to provide some food and stuff, so really encouraging students and young faculty to present so that they can get out there and start gaining confidence and have it in a real environment and interface with other people all across Florida. I say Florida, but we've been getting more and more people because it's so inexpensive coming in from all over the place. Because why not? I mean, and we don't block them out. If you're doing something related and robotics and mechatronics is a very broad term, almost anything can relate to it. So we try to, accommodate everybody who wants to join. I do workshops. I just did one online last week. Trying to get information out, trying to get students interested in coming into STEM sort of fields. Trying to create some connections and cross collaboration. The conference I did last week, I think I had this, about a third was from India, maybe a third to half from Morocco, and the rest from the United States, kind of all mixing in. And it's important to try to create those connections and help foster. So, I've done workshops on campuses before. Again, if it's not too technical, even open it up and really try to get some people from other majors, showing up. Because that can help everybody. As far as mentoring, sometimes you can mentor in class. Sometimes there's something coming up and a lot of the students are at the same phase. And it helps to just kind of say, okay, let's talk about this, rather than the subject is planned for the day, we'll do it like, later, the second half of the class maybe, and there's something, coming up and you want to talk. I know, like, when COVID came out, obviously we're going to be teaching online, but they still really wanted to talk about what it was going to be like, even though we were online. All right, I need to take some time and talk about that. And okay, what do you need to do? How's that affecting how you're gonna, do your coursework? How is that gonna affect your career? Because that's what they're here for. So, need to be conscious of that. And of course, one-on-one guidance. I've done a lot of mentoring as needed, whether it's official, like signing up for a slot, ABET does require faculty do that advising. So, sometimes there's the official recording it for that purpose. Or stopping by, so students need that, and so it's important to have some time set aside for that. I've done club and project advising. I've advised a lot of capstone projects all over the place because I'm multidisciplinary. It doesn't bother me that you've got some project that spans 5 different departments and fields and whatever. That doesn't scare me. So I tend to get picked a lot to do advising, whether I'm the instructor or not. For those types of projects and sometimes with the clubs because, I'm not afraid if it's hands-on or things like that, even if it's something, okay, I've never done that competition before and, I'm not familiar with it, but, like everybody else, I'll learn with you and we'll figure out what the rules are and I'll, help with the, making sure you follow within those constraints. And I've also done, consulting. I like, not necessarily paid, but consulting with companies because that keeps me current. Yeah, what's needed, what's on the market. Sometimes can come in with little grants to help with the courses. And sometimes too, you even get some students placed and say, hey, now that you've got this underway, you need some more help, you kind of need some full-time work, there's a student that's graduating would be great for that. And so I try to do that when it's appropriate. I can't always, but sometimes that happens. So what I see for teaching, anything I do, I like to try to make sure that you keep that critical thinking, interdisciplinary mind. So yeah, maybe your degree's in something, but if you want to adapt to, none of us know what jobs or what the market's going to look like in 5 years. It can change. People are really worried about the AI, AI tools right now coming out and taking your job. So you don't know. But if you have the critical thinking and you kind of understand other things, you can, you kind of pivot. You don't have to go back and get a whole other degree. Maybe you want to take courses, but you don't need to take a whole degree. You still have that confidence and you're, empowered to be able to make those changes and do what you need to work with whatever, because we don't know. And so it's important to collaborate with other departments, even if you're a freshman, even if you're a sophomore, to understand that you're part of this part of what you're here for is that networking and cross collaboration. I like to really do applied again, even if it's a theoretical course, I always do a little bit applied because that's really going to make it sink in. Of course, there's labs. If it's a full lab course, you're gonna have the full labs like normal. A lot of courses you do mini labs, maybe it's just a simulation, maybe it's, just a little thing on paper. Maybe you have your laptops out, you do a little simulation on the computer or something and work with, something that's on, a tool online that can, simulate something. It doesn't matter, you can do a tiny lab and just to make it sure it sinks in. And I try to do that when there's resources available. And I like to bring in experts, even if it's by video or Zoom, to talk to students and say, hey, what you're doing, this is how it applies to me. Maybe I record and use some video over and over again sometimes too. If I can get a Zoom, though, it's better because they can ask questions. So it depends on the situation, but it's important to, make students remember why they signed up, because you can get lost. You signed up and you're just doing your work, remember why you're doing, what is your end goal, what are you gonna get out of it? So I try to incorporate that in my courses when I can. And I try to, keep a holistic view. Engineering is not just, oh, I'm gonna do some calculations. No, and especially if you're doing something like, agricultural engineering, well, now you're dealing with some, chemistry and some biology, you gotta keep in mind, that aspect of it. And then at the end, if you want the system to work, you can make the most wonderful design ever, but if it costs $2 million, then I can tell you, I've seen students, I'm like, that's fantastic, but to manufacture that would be a nightmare. Nobody's gonna buy it, nobody's gonna implement it, and so are you gonna get any satisfaction out of your work that just stays on paper and never is real? You need to consider those, economic parts. You also need to consider culture. Doing robotics, one of the big things you can see, Japan, they will have robotic assistants that will replace the nurses and their pets and everything with robots. No problem with it, no problem. But you can't do that in the United States. We want people. You can't replace the nurse with a robot and have people be okay with that. They're not gonna be all right with, okay, robots coming to take my blood pressure. We're a little more cautious about that, and there's not a right or wrong, it's just the culture. So you've got to keep that in mind, that where you are is going to affect what solutions are basically going to be allowed. Maybe the laws even, don't allow some things to be done. So you got to keep all of this in mind when you're doing a design. And I think it's important even early on to, not to tap down to creativity, because you want to say, go ahead and have that crazy idea. And then after you have the crazy idea, how do you make it work fit within whatever the constraints are? And keep in mind all these constraints. It's not just the engineering constraints, not just the spatial constraints. There's all these other things that come into play, and you've got to keep that in mind. So I try to focus on that as well. And I think especially for women too, that helps keep women interested in engineering, because it is a very human type of field if you consider it from that point of view. So my plan, I was tenure track physicians, if you look at my background. And what I find is a lot of times is, you get to, well, don't worry about the teaching, just bring in money, or even, when I was teaching physician tenure track, well, we want to make more money, so don't worry about updating courses and making it better. Yeah, how can we bring in more money and things like that? I really care about the teaching, so I want to focus more on that. And now that said, I do want to also do research, but kind of on my own terms. I don't want to have, okay, I have to produce, $1 million grants every 3 years. That's not necessarily realistic. That's not necessarily conducive to making sure I'm doing the best teaching job I'm doing. But yes, research is important to make sure that you're up to date. Otherwise, you're going to be teaching 20-year-old material if you don't know what's going on. And I think that the research also helps students, and bringing in the research in the courses. There's nothing wrong with having a research project and having the students work on it in the class. They're getting that benefit that they're doing something real, and I'm getting the benefit that I get to progress on research as well. And it doesn't have to cost anything. It's can be part of what you're doing anyway. So I try to do things that are really going to benefit and be really practical. And I also try to encourage students, like, you don't have to change the world, but change what you can. If you don't like it, change what you can, and then everything else will come out, and eventually you'll start something and it'll turn into something. And I do try to work with industry. So I go to out in the industry and say, you have a problem. If it's a little problem, I can just give it to a little class. If it's a big problem, okay, maybe it's a capstone, or maybe it's a graduate research project. You want to fund, can you fund any of this? That sort of thing. Or even if you can't fund it, can you spend time and give the feedback and make sure that it's that real life experience? So I do try to do a lot of that. You can do a lot of things, solving things in simulation or small scale. You can 3D print things and then see how it works on the small scale. Yeah, it might not be exactly what it's gonna do in real life, but it gives you some data, and that actually helps you get grants later. If you just proved it at small scale, well, now you gotta prove it big scale. It's easier that you've done something rather than, I don't know, I mean, I want money, but I have no idea. So things like that are very helpful. So it definitely plays, with each other, but, I think the education for me is the most important thing, and I get that some people are for research, and that's great, and I think, there needs to be a balance. So planned research, things that I'm interested in as a roboticist, kind of mechatronics person, is I like the idea of the automated agriculture. We've got, a problem in the world where, in some ways we produce, more food than we need, not necessarily where we need it. And that's not always going to be the case as the populations are increasing, the land used for agriculture is decreasing. We need to, come up with solutions. I'm looking at trying, I was doing this at Florida Poly, trying to automate as much as possible, put sensors, on the ground. Most people, if you can, give people something in their house, like we were using 3D printer cases, old ones, and making little systems inside there where they could grow some food in a contained thing on their counter. Even if it's just a little bit, you don't have to feed them for every single meal, but just that little change, that's better than nothing. That gives them just a little bit, start changing mindsets. It doesn't have to cost any of this. This is stuff that was being thrown away anyways. There's a lot of 3D printers that are about to be decommissioned. So they, these are great little boxes, and they've got the motors and sensors and everything you need already. And incorporate some more sensors and have a little thing, okay, beep, so add some water, add some fertilizer. And have these things grow, and you can scale it up. I mean, you want to have a vertical farm, you could take that, yes, there's gonna be changes when you scale up, of course. But you can take that concept and then start scaling that up, and how can you, make it work to do more production and do the production closer to where the food's gonna get used, because when you transport things, you got a lot of rod, you got a lot of loss. I live in Polk County. I live on a main track where the orange trucks go down to the plant to be juiced. I can't tell you how many oranges are in front of my house. I don't buy oranges in the winter. I just go outside in the front yard and pick them off the ground. The trucks are just dumping them everywhere. The further they have to travel, the more oranges you're gonna lose. And so, all these little things to consider that, the closer you can keep the food production to where it's gonna be used, that can help. And I, have extensive experience. I go to Africa and things like that. And, you don't always have it right there where you can produce it. So, if you make it so you can produce at least some of it, that helps. Everything helps. You're not going to solve, I keep telling students, no, you can't solve everything. You're not going to make it work 100%, but you can do a little bit. And if everybody does a little bit, that's going to eventually solve it. And if you don't try, well, then nothing's going to change. So, just little stuff. And I think, important to consider, sustainability. I do robotics, but it's important to listen to people that know and have been farming land. Every geography, every place you go is different. You got to talk to people and find out, okay, what is the problems here? Because what I've experienced here in Florida does not apply to the desert at all. So it's a different type of problem. And so you need to keep in mind the traditional and not ignore that, which is why, I try to tell students, okay, keep in mind culture, any project you're doing, it doesn't matter if you're designing a car even, you gotta keep that culture in mind, because people have different needs and expectations. And then, of course, one of the big things I do for research, as I'm just going along, I mean, this is just part of what I'm doing, I'm teaching anyway, so I do a lot of educational research. And, I'm trying to figure out how can we retain students, particularly the women and minorities, but even the men too. It's, but it's a, big problem, like how to keep people in, if they're in the program and they drop out, everybody says, oh, I'll make more money in business, maybe. I don't know, we're still researching and trying to figure it out. And then how to make it more effective, to meet everybody's needs. And now that there's more and more online and demand for online, how do you make that effective and not just kind of a degree mill, and I won't name any names, but there's a place I've been where that's kind of what I started feeling like it was becoming, like, that just purely online, students were just pulling information from the old courses off of Chegg, plugging it in and going through and getting a degree without actually reading anything. Well, you don't want that either. So you want to keep it effective and figure out how to make it interactive. And just to talk about it, because it's a big thing I've been doing now, and it does relate. Is a software, ethical software lab in UMBC. I've been working with them remotely. One of the things we're doing is how to make software more ethical. One question I can ask, how many people trust your phones that they're not listening to you and they're not taking your data and doing anything you want? Nobody. Nobody trusts their phones. Nobody trusts any of this stuff that we have. And the AI thing being out, AI has been around from the 1950s at least, by the way. But, it's been hyped up right now and it's causing a lot of fear and things like that. And so, another thing is like, okay, let's be realistic about what this is and, really, how can we use it? And how can we not fear it? And how can we not misuse it? And things like that. So one of the things we're working on is, kind of using the nutrition label, again, kind of keeping for health. Software affects your health, whether you know it or not. Your phone can stress you out and cause you more problems in the food you eat sometimes, depending on how stressed out you get by it. And the other devices around you. And so, looking at it, you've got choices. You don't have to have what came on your phone. And so we're trying to put information out, or we're doing independent testing of what these, apps, we're starting with apps on the phone, but we're gonna look at all software that has a product, your washing machine, your car, everything's flying on this. In agriculture, the tractors, I mean, John Deere, kind of famous right now, we're having all the software and all these things and sending back data and everything like that. You need to have this information, so we're trying to, we're collecting data independently and testing real world devices and finding out that yes, Chrome turns on the microphone camera and watches you while you scroll the web, and they don't tell you. And people need to know that and just put it out. I'm not telling you don't use it, but it's important that you know. And if people know, then you can demand the software do what you want it to do. So then people will demand the companies to do the right thing. So we'll make software more ethical that way. So we've got that going on. And we're looking, we've got psychology students and, involved and faculty with us, because it does. How is software affecting health? Can we put that on this nutrition label somehow? How is that affecting your well-being and how you're, living? And whether you know it or not, I mean, it really affects everything. Software is so integrated, even in agriculture. I mean, one of the big problems I know with farmers, you've got a new tractor and something breaks. Well, in the old days, you used to just go and fix it. Now you've got to wait. John Deere is famous for this. You have to wait for one of their technicians to come out to use such their software. You cannot reverse engineer it legally. And they take weeks to come out, which is another ethical thing. If you're going to force it, at least have like people ready to go in my mind. But no, they make you wait weeks. So you're losing your crops or your planting time, whatever, depending on when you lost it. You've got a lot of financial loss in addition. You just paid for this really expensive tractor. And there's nothing you do. And you're waiting for them to come out. And then when they come out and they, you say, okay, well, it's just the sensor. Well, then you got to wait for the sensor, and it takes software. They do software pairing. So without the software update that only John Deere can give you, you can't put that new part into the tractor. And so it's really costing. It's not even just the financial cost of doing that. It's the time and the loss, where you just have a simple old tractor. Yes, it's easier, but then the features are nice. I mean, there's a lot of nice features that software and sensors give you. So it's a trade-off, but again, if people knew and understood, maybe collective voice can help the companies do the right thing and be more ethical and work with people appropriately, because it hurts everybody. If it's not just the farmer lost something. Well, now there's less produce that are out. Eventually, you do this hundreds of times, thousands of times, you're gonna have like a food crisis. I mean, it's just bound to happen. So it really affects everybody. It's not like a minor issue. So yes, it starts with, okay, everybody, we know that we've tested, yes, the cell phone is finite, which is not earth-shattering news, but but more apps than you think. The alarm app on an Android phone listens to you while you're setting your alarm. Like, there's weird things we're finding. So it's important to get that information out, because you wouldn't even think of it. And we don't even get into what the cars are doing in the washing machines. That's a whole nother, they're doing more than you think too.
Especially the Teslas.
But I don't want to make anybody nervous. It's just,
Too late.
yeah, it's just, it is what it is. Like, I mean, we need to fix that as a collective voice, be like, no, we're not just like things for you to make money off. Yeah, worried about TikTok. That's like, I don't think it's as big of a deal as whatever all the appliances in your house and your car, knowing wherever you've been and what you're talking about. But so that's what I'm doing there, and it does absolutely apply. Software is going to apply, and this is a bigger issue. The AI, we're looking at AI, all the hype and the claims, are they real? Most of them, they're just kind of hype and claims. Again, AI's been around for a while. It's just machine learning. It's something you can teach a student how to do. It's nothing magical. It's nothing, special about it. And that's one of the things that we're trying to, showcase. And well, just so yeah, additionally, like I said, we've now involved psychology because we're trying to, okay, how can we make this the label better? And again, we're looking at the health effects and mental health effects of it, and physical health effects. For outreach activities, of course, if here, definitely work within UF, and an IFAS, I kind of already, I've got IFAS, they're all over the state, so of course near me, they're everywhere. I think it's important to try to collaborate. Again, even in Florida, the different areas are very different. What will grow and the problems and things like that are very different in South Florida than North Florida and different areas. So, keep that in mind. And even in the other state university systems, I think I know there's hesitation and a little bit of walls, but because of my background, because I think I've been at almost every institution in Florida at this point, I don't mind trying to reach out and work because it's all coming, everything's coming from the state anyways. We should be working together. That's kind of part of our mission. It's better for the people. I really like doing K through 12 outreach as well, because that brings in students later. Yes, they're in kindergarten, you gotta wait a while, but if you don't get them interested, in fact, we found, one part of my research, trying to keep women, if you don't get them interested by 3rd grade, you lose them, particularly girls. And so that's important. And so I like to do, outreach, especially because I do like robotics things, and so everybody was like robotics. Sometimes I have to like push the parents off too and be like, no, this is for the kids. But it's always good to get the parents excited as well. But I can see doing, going to teach-ins and trying to do some outreach and getting them interested and, workshop, whether it's online or in person, either way. Online, can be effective, and it's definitely lower cost for both for them and us, like everybody bets. And then as mentioned, 4-H is, definitely an option. I didn't put it on here because it's not active in Polk County, but in other places, that's another resource you can use to, try to get students interested in this. People have to be involved, even if you're not going to go into, sort of engineering, into agriculture, making good food choices. Making good choices in your life and being healthy is, very important to me. So just when the parents come and they don't get off the things, I still educate them too, because them having an education makes them healthier, and then they teach your children how to be healthier. So that's, it doesn't matter. We're educating everybody. The mission's for Florida and even globally, not just for the students that pay tuition here. I'm already doing it, but, doing collaborative work with, Morocco and Ethiopia, and maybe if things, calm down, Israel, Palestine, trying to, work with them. There's definitely some problems. There's definitely, Gaza is an example. There's definitely some food insecurity issues on this planet. There's, problems with drought and things like that. So, working, with those places where you can do, the really tough areas, then other areas are easier. And you can definitely try to cater, take solutions like a modularity, take pieces that work for you and put them together. And educational too, not just the agriculture, but also education, same thing, training people to understand where's your food coming from, what can you do? It's important, because if the consumer is not on board, it doesn't matter what you do, because they're not going to buy it, and the companies aren't going to buy it, and so the whole thing fails. So you've got to go everywhere. The education's got to go all the way to the end, to really be successful. And so, kind of some summary things. I feel like education is really, essential, and it's to empower. It's not just the knowledge, because that knowledge might be old in 5 years. But if you really empower them and you get them interested, then they have the confidence and they can, do anything. You kind of keep going. And I focus on the confidence, because whatever we train them, it's going to change in a couple of years. Especially, I've been doing software. Software's going to change in 3 years. I guarantee you. I don't know how, but it's going to. So I'm not teaching you how to write in Python. No. I'm teaching you how to think, so that you can, if you're computer sciences, so that you can, work in whatever software is coming up next, or use the AI tools to help you with the software that's what's coming up next. It's the way of thinking that you're gaining, not just that skill that's good for the next 3 years. And I think the curriculum should be designed for that. It should be kind of modular and adaptive. You not be like, okay, this is my course. I've been teaching it this way for 10 years. I'm not changing. you've got to flex. I make sure every semester I have to change. I tell myself one thing. It doesn't, it could be a new story, something relevant. I have to change one thing every course, at least. Or I'm not doing my job. So, so that's important, and making sure that those assessments match and not just, oh, this is easy. Yes, we all do what's easy, but sometimes that's not what's best. And so, even though sometimes it's harder, do those assessments that take a little more time, but they're definitely more rewarding for everybody. And I like applied learning, and I think research, it goes back and forth. You aid industry helps you, students are gaining, the industry's gaining. There's no reason not to, as far as I can tell, other than, yes, it takes some time to make that connection. And yeah, you go on, sometimes people say, no, all right, fine, it didn't kill me, so go on to the next one, it's okay. So that's, important to do. And I really think, for me, being interdisciplinary has helped. I can, I have no fear, people say, are you scared about AI? No, AI can't take my job because I'll just move to something else. I don't, I don't care. And I think that's important to be interdisciplinary and keep that mind and have a global understanding of what's gonna happen. No, we can't take over the world. If you really understand the economy and how things work, you have no fear. You realize, no, it's just hype. It's not, this is what'll work. And so I think it's important to make sure that students also have that, that kind of mindset, even if you don't go over it yourself, at least have that mindset. So that's it. There wasn't anybody stopped me with questions, but you can ask now. And if you think of something too, I just put my email. So, you can send me an email later, and that's okay too. I don't mind. I get emails from students like 3 years later sometimes asking a question about a course because it kind of came up in something they're doing, so it's okay.
We have questions. Here.
You seem to be a great communicator.
Okay.
Why do you want to be an assistant professor at the University of Florida, 100% teaching appointment? Why not be in private industry, have your own company, consulting, teaching people how to teach?
I've considered, I've run I've had a business before, I've done things and stuff like that. I really, really like teaching, and one thing is, yes, I could have a private company and I could teach how to teach. But it's limited in the scope and the impact that you have. Now, you go to a place like here, like UF. I mean, it's not just the students that are here, although there's a lot of students that are here, there's a lot of graduates are here, there's a lot of influence in the state. But then, I mean, I've worked in the state system before. You really have a lot of leeway to work with others in the state system and really make a bigger impact. Yes, and I would say, okay, do what you can do. Yes, I can make a company and do it on my own. One, I'm not that particularly interested in the business part and the making money part. That's not part of my goal. It's more quality of life and having satisfaction of what I'm doing. I walked away from a really good job without having another one lined up just because I wasn't satisfied. Which, okay, I know I'm weird, but everybody has their goals and that's mine. And so for me, it's not about making money. I think, having an impact, and there's more impact like teaching, students and just keeping things low cost and just trying to make money and worry about, okay, well, how do I get students, people coming into the workshop and how to make it hyped up and everything like that. I just want to be real and help and have the biggest impact. And yes, I can't tell you how many people, including my parents, have told me I'm not making enough money and things of that sort, but it's not my goal. And I was tenure track, full with the research thing before. It's not aligning with my goals. I'm not happy doing that. And maybe it's, again, the ethical part of me and everything. I want that satisfaction. I'm telling people to be healthy and make choices be healthy. And it's not a one size fits all. And for me, being healthy is, having a job where I want to go in and I'm excited for it and not feeling like, even if you're, I don't know. So for me, I just love teaching. I love being in the classroom. I tried the private universities. I think the public is a better fit for me. I'm not trying to, of course, you gotta worry about money. I get it. You have to, certain amount of courses and tuition, things like that. I get it. And research money coming in, but it's not the main focus. And for me, it's also not the main focus. I want to make sure that the education is really helping impact whatever I can impact my sphere. I'm not going to change the world necessarily, But, just that little piece, and then it's gonna keep rippling out. I really feel that that's a big thing, that it really does happen. Those little changes can really spread out.
You can ask a follow-up question, then you talk about impact.
Yeah,
So how do we define impact as a teacher?
so I think impact you would be evaluated by the students. Did the students leave the class or the program or whatever it is you're looking at, because I'm designing programs too. Did they leave saying, okay, I entered with this goal for, myself, did they leave with that? Saying that, yeah, it's achieved and I can now do, what I came in the program, or did I feel like I was just paying tuition and I like, okay, wait, what did I spend this last 4 or 5 years doing? The impact is measured really by the students, a lot of times. And also, you can also measure from industry, they got that side too, are the employers or, but I like to try to convince students, like you said, to start businesses. As a side thing, I don't mind doing it, but as a main thing, it's just something. But, if you're going on, for that, it's students, then that's fine too, but, is it relevant to what's needed? So if industry, can you take the students and you're happy with them too? Yes, you're gonna have to do some training. You're always gonna do some training for your particular, whatever you're doing. But, were they open and receptive to it and, able to kind of quickly, get involved and do what you need? Or was it, no, you, not effective, you don't wanna, hire the students from the program ever. You don't want to hear that. So the impact, unfortunately, it takes a while. You got to measure it later, but that's why it's a design process. You take that data and you feed it back in and you start doing the change again from the front. And it can take a while to really get the program, fully underway. And it's going to, even when it's underway, it's going to change. So it's a constant measuring. I don't know, as an engineer, I like to keep taking data. That's the only way you can measure it. Yeah.
So you mentioned several times about hands-on and practical learning. Is there some maybe example that might be highlights of your program that you implemented through the years as hands-on teaching projects or teaching exercise or learning exercise, or like you mentioned as well, online laboratory that you were successful with? So what would be some of the concrete example or highlights you can share with us?
Yeah, so some of them I mentioned were, doing an analysis of a project that's being installed locally, because I was involved with putting up a green wall in a library, things,
Yeah.
and putting pieces like that as appropriate in the classes, and doing that, working with the schools to make equipment that they needed for the exceptional education. I still do that sometimes as well. So that's something. I've taught capstone a lot, I guess being the interdisciplinary person in the room. And that's been very varied because I'll just kind of help try to go out, and if there's resources in the university, that's great too. If there's not, like, well, I didn't have any, it was me. Going out to local areas and saying, hey, you got any problems? We can solve them, maybe not for free, but fairly inexpensive. And maybe you don't get a guaranteed result either, but at least it's, it's good for the students. You get to evaluate them if you want employees. And so capstone, so many examples of that where medical devices, we've done some agricultural projects with citrus, trying to do sensors to automated watering things to try to conserve water, to keep costs down. I've done surgical sort of systems where students were doing some visual, because I've got students from all different majors, so face recognizing certain spots so that the procedure is done in the appropriate place on the face, no matter, because everybody's got a slightly different shaped face, so you make sure you hit the same spot and not their eye or something. I've had students on things I hadn't work to do like the second and third prototypes for doing robots for remote eye surgery and examinations. Which is an important thing because there's usually not ophthalmologists available everywhere. But if you were at a car accident, you've had an eye injury, you got maybe a half hour before you've got permanent blindness. So you really need to have somebody look at it and try to do an emergency sort of surgery quickly. But it might take them a half hour to get to the hospital, so they can do it from their phone. Okay, it's not great. It's a little nervous, but yeah, I get it. The Japanese are more open than the Americans, again, culture. But if you had a choice between taking that risk and you could probably get your eyesight back, or you're going to be blind forever. you're gonna take the risk, because I mean, if it fails, you're gonna have the same result, so. You know, so that was something, you know, having students learn pieces, of course, that one, so some of it, they can only do certain
Yeah.
pieces. And IRB and things getting involved, some of it, so you gotta always kind of keep that in mind. For other projects, with the software side, you know, having students, you know, go out to industry and working. Well, Baltimore, I mean, some of them go out to like the government agencies and try to do things to improve some of the web services, because I think we can all agree government services websites can be improved. And try to make, you know, small improvements at least, on some of those, and for the local businesses. I try to, local community organizations, they can't afford somebody to do their IT work, you know, so to, you know, find projects for them to make their services better, you know, their, presence online, or their back-end technical parts, you know, incorporating it more to make them more efficient and things like that, so. Some of it I can't, you know, talk about either, because it goes into government, so I'm trying to avoid those ones, but yeah, a big variety, you know, honestly, I think it's important to be open to one for what student interests are. And even though I have like my pet things, and if I can give my pet projects out and the students take it, that's great. Like the little robot I showed, you know, that was something, making it open source. To making it adaptable, many uses for that, but one is, you know, to do physical therapy and to demonstrate the movements. You can actually build the robot up inexpensively to match the child, so the child's missing an arm or a small arm. You build the robot to match, and then they can relate to it, rather than an adult saying, oh, do this, when you've got a full arm.
Okay.
The child feels like, well, you can do that at first, but what about me? And so it's important to kind of have that relatable experience, so that was something, that I did, and then that platform is actually good. You know, now it can cycle out, we're using it, you know, to teach, you know, programming, and to get students, you know, interested in STEM and things like that, so it has other purposes as well, so, and again, I love things that have multiple purposes, because you really get a lot of impact and value out of it that way, without putting in more costs. On the basic stuff, you can, you know, do the add-ons and really, you know, customize it, so. So all over, I mean, you know, so even though I have my
Yeah,
I don't take it
all the
offense if
time,
another student
so-
wanna do it.
Yeah.
Any online questions? No?
Yeah,
We got about 2 minutes, any?
yeah, and anybody watching the recording can email me, so it's okay.
That those two questions, you pick the one you like the best. So the one question is, you mentioned 5-minute videos. So
Yeah.
as I look at the history of teaching, we started with 20 minutes, then
Yes.
we are going to 15, then we 5 minutes. So the question is, are we basically degrading the attention span of students by our teaching? That's one question.
Mhm.
The second question is regarding so I work with food scientists a lot. The nutrition facts label.
Mhm.
What is the daily value requirement?
0.
So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
those are the two questions.
Okay, so the first is, I think that, yeah, we're all noticing, and the research is showing the attention spans are decreasing. I don't think I mean, at the college level, I didn't cause the attention span to decrease because I wasn't part of the early education. There's many theories and things like that, and that kind of gets into probably more than we have time for, and I'm not an expert in it. So it's just the fact is the attention span, I treat it as fact, the attention span is decreasing. There's causes why things, okay, you know, that's an interesting thing, but that's kind of somebody else's realm. I just have to deal with the fact, now, I'm not saying, I will still give them that 15-minute content, but I'll break it up. And there's a difference, when you break it up and you give them 15 minutes, it's different than if it's 15 minutes. Yes, it's the same thing in the end, but mentally, I think it's different if you say, oh, I just spend 5 minutes and then I can do something, and then I come back for 5 minutes.
Shouldn't
so-
we correct that
Oh, and
by
that's.
giving them 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and an hour-long lecture?
Yeah, we can try.
125.
3 hour lecture.
I think then we're competing with TikTok.
Then we're competing, yeah, I mean, you can try it, I think we all try that, and I think that we all had probably, I would guess, the same outcome, where it doesn't matter after 5-10 minutes, it's like the phone on the lap thing going on and all that, yeah. If they're being polite, just the plain laptop out in front of them.
Maybe we're not trying the right way.
Maybe, and there's discussions, okay, and I don't wanna get into politics too much, but in Florida, because, you know, my children are in the Florida education system. And I noticed my son is reading books that I did in high school, and I was educated in Detroit, so it's no different. Which, okay, it's great. Well, no, they're graphic novels of the books I read. The Florida apparently bans certain classic books and they can only use the graphic novel version. Well, that I don't think is gonna be great for helping to improve attention span. Now they're coming in and they can't read a full chapter book. And he's in the honors program, so I'm a little concerned if the honors program's using graphic novels, what are the regular student kids doing? I don't know. Using pamphlets, I don't know. So I mean, yes, I have some concerns and it goes back even before we get them. And ironically too, one of the projects I kind of have on the side that I'm, Locust Video Companies. Yes, I actually am trying to do something, but I'm trying to make a good school that is more like the schools that they used to be. And, and like they do in Finland, but make it, for the US. And I'm also, because it was interesting, I'm trying to duplicate, but fit the culture in Morocco and Ethiopia as well. And so that's actually something I'm kind of doing, on the side. But yeah, to try to improve education. So yes, I'm doing that on the side. I'm still working on that. And there's many theories, and one is trying, pushing kids too early and to kind of let them do more physical and developable naturally, and then it's okay if they don't start reading till later, but at least they become a really good reader when they do, rather than trying to force it really early and then make it, oh, well, that's all you can do, let's do little chunks. Let them gain the confidence. And then when they're a reader, they're a really good reader and they can, go, full head, because I've got graduate students, honestly, and they can't read a 100-page textbook. They just can't. And that's scary. 100-page, not even a full, this is a small book. And that's kind of terrifying. And this is an honors program, graduate student. And so, yeah, it's a problem. And you do your little bit to try to nudge them, but the reality is you sign and say you have to read it, they'll fail it, they don't care. At some point, it's not worth the effort, why? So it's a problem, and some of it I'm still trying to research that. That's something I'm trying to look at, and I just keep playing around with the courses, like, okay, can I get them for the attention span, I just accept it and I just, for now, break it up. And it's fine for me, actually, it works out great breaking it up, because like I said, I can pull out a video that's now a piece of it and then update it and just put that piece in. I don't have to redo the entire 15 or 45 minutes. I can just do like a 5-minute piece or a 2-minute piece or whatever, size it was. And so in some hand, that actually works out really well for me. It saves me time later updating. And so I'm kind of embracing that part, that actually works out really well. But then the students, I've actually done studies too, and I'm thinking only 20% actually watch the videos. These are videos. I'm not even asking them to read the textbook, and it's a problem. And this is this is in Maryland, so it's not a Florida problem. It's an everywhere problem. These are international students coming in too. It's an everywhere problem, which is why we got to keep a global mindset. It's not just us, not just an American thing. It's everywhere. Everybody's got this problem, and yeah, there's a lot. That's a good question. So. Yeah, as far as the nutrition label, well, we've got psychology people on it that know better for me, but yeah, you don't need to have any. But we're trying to see where does that, how much does your phone pinging at you, where does it actually interrupt your mental health and your physical health? And that's something to figure out, to tell people, all right, as you're piecing together the applications you're using, and also consider your car and your washing machine, everything else is gonna beep at you. You can only stand 15 beeps a day or whatever, I'm making some up. But you need to have that limit, and I'm sure we're all over the limit. I think, one time I remember reading like something like, oh, when your phone beeps, like it makes you excited and you feel like, loved or something. Like, I must be doing it wrong, because when my phone beeps, I'm like, oh, okay, what do you want?
It does introduce a certain degree of anxiety, right? Yeah.
Yeah, somebody wants something from me. Nobody's gonna say hi, how are you? Somebody wants something from me. Which is, kind of okay. Sometimes it can be exciting and sometimes it's less exciting. So, but it's just like, I was like, I don't know, I get anxiety when I get a text message, not like, yeah, I got a text message.
Well, I think we are at 11:20. You've got a short break.
Okay.
And then I think you've got another meeting with Suck and Tar.